Do you ever wonder whether or not you exist? Believe it or not, that's a very old question. René Descartes was a 17th century French philosopher, mathematician, and scientist whose ideas helped shape the modern Western understanding of knowledge and the mind. He's best remembered today for one short statement: I think, therefore I am. Even if you've never heard the phrase before, you've probably encountered the idea behind it. Our ability to think is evidence that we exist. It's elegant, memorable, and one of the best-known sentences in all of philosophy. But the most interesting part may be the part we don't usually mention. Descartes didn't get to his idea because it suddenly occurred to him that he was thinking. He got there because he kept doubting. He asked himself, what would happen if he questioned everything he believed he knew? What if his senses were misleading him? What if his memories were wrong? What if the world around him wasn't quite what it appeared to be? What if even the things that seemed completely obvious could not be trusted? He kept stripping away one certainty after another until he reached the one thing he could not doubt, that he was doubting. Even if everything he believed turned out to be wrong, the doubt itself was still happening. His reasoning can be expressed this way: I doubt, therefore I think, therefore I am. Philosophers have been asking whether we can be certain of our own existence for a very long time. Descartes realized that the question itself contained an answer. If I'm wondering whether I exist, then something must be doing the wondering. The fact that I can doubt my existence proves that I exist, at least enough to do the doubting. I doubt, therefore I think, therefore I am. I exist. I am real. That is not literally a longer quotation that later generations shortened. Descartes expressed the idea in several different ways, but doubt was the method that led him to his famous conclusion. And yet we remember the conclusion, but forget the doubt. We kept, I think. We left behind, I doubt. What does that say about us? Maybe it says that we are more comfortable with answers than questions. We tend to admire the person who sounds certain. I know. It sounds strong. I wonder can sound hesitant. I might be wrong can sound like an admission of failure. But it isn't. Being able to wonder whether we might be wrong is one of the clearest signs that we are actually thinking. Doubt is not the enemy of truth. Often, it's the very thing that helps us find it. Think about how much of our moral progress began with someone questioning something that everyone else had accepted as normal. Why are some people allowed to vote while others are not? Why are some children educated while others are sent to work? Why are some marriages honored while others are forbidden? Why are some people treated as fully human while others are pushed aside? Every time our understanding of justice has grown, someone first had to doubt the way things had always been done. They had to ask, why is it this way? And then, does it have to be? Doubt is one of the engines of moral progress. It's also one of the engines of intellectual progress. Science moves forward because researchers are willing to question yesterday's conclusions. Justice moves forward because societies question assumptions that earlier generations accepted without much thought. Democracy depends upon our willingness to question leaders, political parties, institutions, and ourselves. Civilization itself depends upon our ability to ask one very simple and difficult question: what if we're mistaken? The same is true in religion. The world's scriptures, traditions, and philosophies do not give up all their meaning at once. People return to them again and again. They read, interpret, question, discuss, disagree, and read them again. Each generation notices something that the previous generation missed. Sometimes we discover beauty that's been overlooked. Sometimes we discover harm that's been justified for far too long. A sacred text can speak differently when it's read by someone whose voice was once excluded from the conversation. A woman may notice something generations of male interpreters did not. A formerly enslaved person may hear a promise of liberation where an enslaver heard permission to rule. An LGBTQ person may find dignity in a tradition that others used to shame them. The words may be the same, but the questions have changed. And because the questions have changed, we are more able to see more. That's what healthy doubt can do. It helps us look beyond the first answer we were given. It helps us notice when authority has been mistaken for truth. It helps us ask whether an inherited interpretation is the only possible one, or simply the one we were taught first. Doubt makes us uncomfortable because it creates a space between what we believe and what might actually be true. Once that space opens, we can't completely control where it will lead. We might have to change our minds. We might have to rethink something we've believed for years. We might have to admit that what we thought was the whole truth was only part of it. We might even have to admit that someone we dismissed could see something we could not. Doubt puts the ego at risk. That may be why religious, political, and cultural authorities have often had such an uneasy relationship with it. Questions can be treated as rebellion. Certainty can be mistaken for maturity. Doubt can be treated as though it were the opposite of faith. But certainty and faith are not the same thing. Certainty says, I cannot be wrong. Faith says, I will keep searching, even though I do not yet see the whole truth. Certainty closes the door. Faith gives us the courage to keep it open. The Jewish tradition has long understood the power of this kind of questioning. In a practice called Havruta, students study sacred texts in pairs. They question each other. They challenge each other. They disagree and debate. The goal is not simply to win an argument. The goal is to understand more together than either person could understand alone. One student notices something the other missed. One question reveals an assumption neither of them had recognized. The disagreement is not a failure of the process. It is part of the process. That practice is based on a deep trust. Trust is not threatened by honest questions. If an idea is true, questioning can help make it clearer. If it's incomplete, questioning can help make it larger. If it's false, questioning can help set us free from it. It's not truth that fears examination. It's fragile authority. Of course, not every form of doubt is healthy. Doubt can be used to avoid responsibility. It can be manufactured to dismiss evidence we don't like. It can become an excuse to believe nothing, trust no one, and refuse to act. We see this when people respond to overwhelming evidence by saying, well, nobody really knows. Sometimes that's not honest doubt. Sometimes it's simply a way of avoiding an inconvenient truth. Healthy doubt does not mean that nothing can be known. It means remaining willing to ask why we believe what we believe. It means knowing the difference between evidence and opinion. It means being as willing to question ourselves as we are to question everyone else. Healthy doubt is not the refusal to trust anything. It's the refusal to make an idol of our own certainty. None of us sees the whole picture. Every one of us looks at the world through the narrow opening of a single human life. Our families, cultures, fears, loyalties, wounds, and hopes all shape what we notice. They also shape what we fail to notice. That's why we need one another. Someone else's question may reveal the edge of our vision. Their experience may expose an assumption we didn't know we were making. Their doubt may become a gift, not because it destroys what we know, but because it allows us to know more. Perhaps we should be a little less suspicious of certainty and a little more appreciative of doubt. Certainty ends the conversation. Doubt begins it. Certainty says, I already know. Doubt asks, what haven't I seen yet? Without doubt, there's very little curiosity. Without curiosity, there is very little learning. And without learning, there is no path toward wisdom. We remember, I think, therefore I am, because it sounds firm. It gives us solid ground beneath our feet. But Descartes reached that solid ground only after he allowed everything he thought he knew to be questioned. Maybe that's the deeper wisdom hiding inside his famous statement. Consciousness is not only the ability to think, it's the ability to question our own thinking. Maturity is not demonstrated by how certain we sound. It is demonstrated by how willing we are to examine our certainty. To doubt is not to abandon truth. It is to participate in its discovery. It's to return to scripture, tradition, experience, and reason with the courage to look again, and then to look more deeply. Perhaps the clearest evidence that we are truly thinking is not how confidently we announce what we know. Perhaps it's how courageously we ask what we might still have wrong.